Hello, and welcome to the Producers Guild conversation with Steve McQueen on his wonderful project, Small Acts. We'd like to thank our friends at Amazon Studios and Strategy PR for making this event possible. It is my pleasure to introduce our moderator today. Justin Chang is a film critic for the Los Angeles Times and NPR's Fresh Air. He serves as chair of the National Society of Film Critics and is secretary of the Los Angeles Film Critics Association. Welcome, Justin. Welcome, Steve. And please, Justin, take it away.
Thank you, Kyle. Hello, Steve. How are you? It's a pleasure to be here with you again.
Pleasure to be here with you too. Yes, on trying times, but yes, pleasure.
Very trying. I think your film has a lot to comfort us with and also to challenge us with in these already challenging times. We last spoke 2 years ago about your film Widows, and here we are talking about Small Acts, a very different work, a multi-part work about a time and a place and a community that we've so rarely seen in cinema and in television. So first off, just congratulations on this very beautiful and groundbreaking and category-defying work of art.
Thank you so much.
You've spoken about this already, and I think the films speak clearly for themselves, how necessary this project is, just the void that it fills in our knowledge of these stories, this history. I know it's been more than a decade in the making, but can you go back and talk about that moment, however long ago it was, when this realization that you had of just how underrepresented West Indian life, Black British life was on screen, became this desire to make a film, a series of films about them?
Well, it became a must, a need, and a want, because I didn't see. There was a narrative that was being swept beneath the carpet, and I saw it consistently being done. And the West Indian community has such an influential impact on British society, politically, socially, culturally, undeniably, something that can never be turned back. And the reverberations go far and wide, but at the same time, one didn't see themselves on screen. And one wasn't welcomed in the film and TV community. And for me, it was a situation when people started to sort of, pass, when people started to sort of die. And it was one of those things where I thought to myself, I have to do this now before more people pass and not tell their stories, because these stories are the sort of, the fundamental stories of the contemporary British history. And it was just one of those things which it was a need, and it was a gut thing. Also my parents, and what they went through, and again, it was one of those things where it needed to be seen. Things that were swept beneath the carpet had to come into the light, and that was my job.
How did you settle on these five as the five stories that you wanted to tell? And of course, in Mangrove, Lover's Rock, Alex Wheatle, Education, Red, White, and Blue. And I want to bring in also just your co-writers, Alistair Siddons and Courttia Newland, with whom you worked across the project. Can you talk about just how important their contributions were?
Immense. Their contributions were immense, especially in the research with Helen Bart, who's an associate producer. It was all about the research, because we had to do a lot of digging, because things which are hidden or tossed aside as being not important, we had to find that kind of stuff. So as Alistair has a base in documentary research, and Helen is a news researcher. She basically does research. The equivalent of 60 Minutes in the UK is called Newsnight. So she was just digging and finding things and bringing people to our attention, and also finding people. Where are they? They're missing. Are they dead? Are they alive? Where are they in the world? And she would find them. And so it was just amazing, that kind of depth of research, as well as, look, I remember when we were doing Mangrove. And of course, unfortunately, it was a year after that people started to take transcribed court records. So when the Mangrove trial was happening, there weren't no court records. But Alistair found, I think it was the North Kensington Gazette, a journalist who was there every day for 59 days. And at that time, it was the longest court case in the history of the United Kingdom, in the Old Bailey. So he found this guy, this journalist, this in the North Kensington Gazette, who was there every day. So a lot of our research came from that, but also a lot of our research came from Ian MacDonald, God bless his soul, because the year after we interviewed him, he died. And yeah, it was heavy because, you know, Helen sort of introduced us to him. We got all his court records as well. And, you know, his first-hand account was so fascinating. And could you imagine what would have happened if we hadn't got to him before? Unfortunately, he passed. So God you know, rest his soul and all that. You know, Ian, he's just a beautiful man. So it was all about that. Yeah, it felt like a court case in effect when we were doing the research. The clock was ticking. You know.
And was it a balance? I mean, there's all that research and all this process of discovery for you, but of course, was it also balancing research with your own personal memories, just the sights and sounds and smells of just this period that you lived through? Was it like a balance of that, of kind of discovering new things, but also plumbing something very personal?
Absolutely. And before I do that, I have to mention Tracy Scofield and David Tennant, the two other producers, executive producers on this, who were, you know, obviously instrumental in making this happen. It was about that. Yes, it was about that. It was about that memory, as you say, and the smell. I remember the smell of the food, the smell of the Calagas fire. You know, how even people, cheap perfume. We used to have this thing called Charlie perfume and Brute 45. But so then, you know, what I mean by smell, because sometimes memory comes back. It's almost like if you go somewhere and all of a sudden things come to you because of the smell is much more how can I say, poignant than even images that people show you. So a lot of memories kept on coming back to me. And it was one of those things where it was a lot to do with the style, the look of things, how people were, how even people walked, how people carried themselves. I remember the hot comb when people used to straighten the hair and the burning, that smell. It was incredible going back into the research. And again, we had this amazing production designer, Helen Scott, who was amazing in finding those things which I remember from my past, but also she grew up in that period. So there was a familiarity to some extent, even if it wasn't exactly my background, but she was accustomed to how things looked. And again, I thought Jacqueline Duran, of course, and Lisa Ducan, who were the two costume designers. Jacqueline did Lovers Rock, and she did Red, White, and Blue, and she did Alex Wheatle, and Jacqueline did Mangrove, and excuse me, am I going crazy? Lisa did Mangrove, and Sinead did Education. I mean, look, this doesn't happen without people. This doesn't happen without genius talent. And again, I'm going on a bit, but I just want to talk about also like, you know, Shabik Kuchler, because each individual film had different film techniques. Mangrove 35, Lovers Rock Digital, Education 16, as well as, well, Education 16. I mean, we could go on about frame ratios and whatever. So I'm rabbiting on just because it took the ethos of Small Axe to make Small Axe. Us. It's all about us.
Absolutely. I mean, you took the next question on my mind. It was just it's astonishingly versatile work. And I think it, you know, just keeping it all in your head too, but also everyone keeping it in their heads. And you had to do this in quite a tight period of time, and pulling together 5 different films, which from across the board, cinematography, hairstyling, costumes, production design, distinct looks. You know, these are films set at, you know, some are set during the same time period, but of course Mangrove is much earlier. So that must have been just the juggling act must have been an extraordinary challenge.
We shot Mangrove in 30 days. We shot Lovers Rock in 9 days. We shot Alex Wheatle in 15 days. We shot Red, White, and Blue in 15 days. And we shot Education in 11 days. You know, just get on with it. Yeah. And I think that the wind was in our sail because of the passion of what we were doing. And also, you know, the talent that we were working with. I mean, it's one of those things where when you're working with great editors, you know, I was very fortunate to collaborate with Chris Dickens. And again, working in lockdown with both our children being homeschooled and the whole thing going on, and, you know, relatives and stuff, you know, unfortunately, you know, not being well and whatnot. It was heavy, but somehow the material was our lifeline, and I mean that. And you could see the amount of sort of, I don't know, it was definitely a life ring for us in a way, just to move through that particular period with Chris. Yeah.
Yeah. Steve, you know, I want to talk especially about, you mentioned Shabir Kushner, your cinematographer, who's, you know, so talented, and this is your first time you've worked with him. Just can you speak just the visual differences among the films also, but just the different energy, and there's an energy, I think, to Small Axe that is different even from your feature films that you've made. They're as beautifully composed as you know, Hunger and 12 Years a Slave, but there is I don't know whether it's a looseness, a spontaneity to especially in Lovers Rock, and part of that I imagine is just, as you say, the speed and energy at which you had to work. But was this just an opportunity to do something just new stylistically as well?
I think flow. I think, you know, I think there's also the whole idea when you're a producer, you know, I don't have to have debate. I just do it. I mean, I do what I want to do anyway. But in this case, I mean, hiring Shabir, for example, I mean, a lot of people would not have hired him because they think he wouldn't have been that much experience. But I remember when I got my first break, I had no experience. Right. You know, I did The Hunger, and they were giving me, you know, 1.3 million quid to sort of shoot a movie about Bobby Sands in Northern Ireland. But when I met Shabir, I just loved him. I saw some of his work, and I thought, you know, let's do this. You know, it's all about giving people opportunity, and I think that's what it's all about. And I'll talk about the people that we gave opportunities who were their first time on set, first time anything. But what Shabir had was a certain flow. And I love that he's a looseness, you know, and also because he's a sailor and a skater. So for me, he has some of the best hands I've been with. So there's a flow and also, you know, he's a West Indian man. So there's a certain kind of looseness in how he sort of approaches things. And, you know, again, he's a young man. So there's a kind of situation where it's just a case of you give him an idea and he'll do it. And he'll do it this way, do it that way. Okay, do it this way, this way. Okay, move this way. He has a certain sort of, again, you know, once an actor is near someone, it's the energy they get from that person. And he's such a beautiful man. And he's always willing to find out and learn that people feel that. So, you know, he get as close to a butterfly as he possibly can. The butterfly wouldn't move off because he's feeling that energy. It's about that. It's about that flow and communication. You know, he's a beautiful man. And, you know, I think what happens when you give out energy, you know, it bounces off the whole crew. So he was a beautiful person. Somehow, sometimes you pick people for that, you know. I don't, you know, let's see how we go. And he was really a person who is all about, let's see. Because I'm about let's see. So when you get someone who's let's see. You know, what's the worst thing that can happen? We'll do something else. So that's it. Yeah.
It is wonderful to have that freedom. I wanted to ask just particularly about Mangrove, which the demands of which I think are, you can see them on screen, just the very complex staging in those courtroom scenes, which have a dynamism that I don't think we often see in courtroom drama. And of course, the scenes of the protest, you know, really large scale, you know, tough to orchestrate. And you just talk about just orchestrating those scenes and with Shabir and just that visual dynamism that you achieve. Yeah.
That's a great point, because what I love about what you just said is it's the more chaotic side to the more, you could say, formal side, and how you can subvert the formal side. So with the sort of with the demonstration and the fracas that took place, it was all about that energy. Again, getting to the lead characters within the chaos and finding them. And therefore, and of course, when you got someone like Shabir, who's, I think, one of the most beautiful, I mean, he's a skater and a sailor, so he has a wonderful sense of balance. So even when you frame off, he's always going to find something to sort of look at. When you frame off, he's always going to find something, you know, so there's a beautiful, you know, he's an island kid. So therefore, you know, there's an equilibrium to him, which is almost uncanny. So within the chaos, you would always find a sense of, you always find a center. You know, it's not going to make you ill. You're going to find a sense of perspective. So, for example, okay, so there's that. Okay, and again, to choreograph can't even speak anymore. I'm getting too excited.
Right.
Choreograph the crowd, and you know, we had 200 people there. That was exciting as well, just because it's how people you know, move from left to right, and where the camera is. I mean, what I love about it is that you don't even know, you're not even thinking of the camera. You're not thinking of the camera. You're in that crowd. You're getting anxious, and I think, yeah, that is a testimony to Shabe's hands, but also it's a testimony to, you know, basically people taking good direction, because, you know, go left, go right. Everyone was on that day. You know, my assistant director was just on. You know, we were, you know, it was going to rain, and thank God it didn't pour, and we did things in cracking time. I don't know. We just did it. The fly off the seat of our pants. I'm speaking too much. I'm sorry. I'm getting too excited.
No, you're not. Not at all.
No. So, and the courtroom. So the courtroom. What's interesting about the courtroom, of course, is the ritual. I love ritual, and of course, when you go into the archaic courtroom, the Old Bailey, you know, one of the oldest courts in the land, you know, what it was is the first time Black people had the opportunity to cross-examine, question, and hold to account the establishment ever in the history of the UK, the United Kingdom. So what happened in that situation, this is unique, it's never happened before. People don't even know what Darcus or Frank said, or what Letitia, and Anthony Jones LaQuant said. So to have the opportunity to sort of share this was really important. But also, it's how that community circumnavigated, basically changed the environment from an archaic sort of place of so-called law to a place of righteousness. Through the gallery, they changed it into a congregation. Through the stand, they changed it into a pulpit. So they were sort of given the kind of sermons of righteousness, sermons of truth. So they changed the environment, because when you go into the Old Bailey for the first time, my goodness, you're intimidated. But how they at first were intimidated, but at the same time changed that environment into they owning it. And that's what we were trying to do at that point, to bring things in at a certain point. But also the ritual is so beautiful, to stand up, yes, my Lord, you know, no, my Lord, no, my Lordship. It's not my Lord, it's my Lordship. It's like, it's just beautiful, the banging on the door, all of these things, and how you could change that place of intimidation to a place of, righteousness.
Yes, absolutely. That transformation that occurs in terms of justice, but also visually as well.
No, it's happening. And then the gallery take over, and then the stand is a pulpit. It's sorry, going on a bit.
Not at all. And we might as well talk about just this theme throughout so many of the films, this recurring theme about just how the most important activism is thrust upon people who don't necessarily consider themselves activists, like Frank Critchlow in Mangrove, like Agnes in Education even. I love the way she becomes, you know, you think at first that she's maybe this, sort of antagonistic figure to her young son, and she becomes the hero in that story in taking it into her own hands. Mangrove, of course, especially features the prominently quoted words of C.L.R. James, the historian and socialist, who speaks of this kind of activism. And this is obviously the life, in some ways, part of the lifeblood of this project. Can you talk about the James component? Was that there from the beginning? When did his words become part of this?
C.L.R. James?
Yes.
Oh yeah, that was early on, and that was Alistair, because we talked about that speech. I think Alistair took that from some text. The whole idea of a man who pronounced him doesn't know that he's a leader among his own people. And that just fitted perfectly. So when Alistair came to me, I said that's in for sure. So that beautiful sort of, and again, it's totally Frank. I mean, Frank's interested in gambling and, you know, opening his cafe. You know, maybe he was slightly dodgy before. Now he wants to go straight and open his restaurant. Yeah. And I think, you know, the last thing I shot in Mangrove, it was a pickup, because I thought, no, I need this shot, was when Frank goes to his window and puts in the card, a black ownership, because in some ways it's so kind of reflecting on what C.L.R. James says. You know, that's all. You know, that just want a piece of the pie. That's all. That's it. Nothing crazy. And for that is obviously too much for certain people. So again, through him just opening a cafe, that's what it was. That's what it was. That's what it was. That's what it was. It was a Western. That's what it was. So for me, I always thought, oh, it's a Western. This is Frank. Maybe he was a bit slightly dodgy before, but he's not. He's just opening his saloon, and the big bad sheriff is trying to sort of bring him out, bring him down. And that's what it is. This guy is opening a little hole in the wall saloon, and this sheriff is saying, get out of here. So that's what it's a Western. It's a Western. Yeah. It's a Western.
I hadn't thought about it that way, but that's so true. I just want to say too, one shot from Mangrove that stays with me, and I think a lot of people, is that lingering shot after the restaurant's been destroyed for whether it's the first or the second time, and that shot of the bowl or the piece of the kitchen, and that lingering there's this incredible moment of stillness amid this tumult. It just really stays with you. I don't know. Had to mention that scene too.
Sometimes things happen, and you just have to know when they're happening. That's why you have to be aware. I think that's why directing is so tiring. It's extraordinarily tiring, because you have to be on 24/7. That's why you need a good crew, because there's no director. I mean, sometimes you've got to be carried by your crew. So to have that kind of attention all the time as a director, it's impossible. So that's sometimes you've got to be carried by the crew. So when I see something, it's just one of those things where you just got to be on. You got to be sensitive to your environment you're in. That's it.
Yeah. One thing I think is really I love about these movies is just the economy of the storytelling. Not just, and I'm not speaking just about running times. Some of these are just a little over an hour, but the discipline of your focus in terms of narrative. Like in Red, White, and Blue, we focus on the early struggles of Leroy Logan, his entry into the Metropolitan Police. In Alex Wheatle, we see Alex's early years, his participation in the Brixton Uprising and his incarceration. But the triumphs that followed, especially, are sort of left off screen. These remind me of origin stories in a way, where we see just the initial adversity, and the later work that followed is we should go and read about those achievements, but they are left to the imagination in terms of these movies. Can you talk about just that it seems like a very conscious decision to focus on origins?
The initial, exactly, it's the seed. And, again, I wanted to leave it in 1984 at that point where Leroy Logan is talking to his father on that table, because this is it. It's only going to repeat itself in another form. Maybe he gets higher up, but it's only going to repeat itself. And it did. Any person of color who sees Red, White, and Blue will recognize themselves in it immediately. In whatever institution you're in, whatever workplace you're in, you will recognize it. Then through no fault of your own, often people try to limit your advancement. And I need to leave it there, because it will just happen again. Now all I was doing was repeating myself at another time. So it had to happen then, and him understanding finally what it's all about, him and his father having that conversation. Because in some ways his father is radical, which is often it's the other way around. And they had that conversation. Yeah.
And I want to just to lean into just stories of police brutality, police racism, themes of course that run through Mangrove and Red, White, and Blue in particular. These themes are always obviously and sadly relevant, but especially so this past year. And I think, just speaking as an American too, there's sometimes the myopia of just not being as cognizant of institutional systemic racism in other parts of the world. Another reason why this project is so valuable. What's it like for you personally, just seeing these films come out this past year of worldwide Black Lives Matter protests, the year of the police killing of George Floyd, and so many others?
I don't know. I get asked the question a lot, and it hurts. It's difficult to talk about. I mean, I rather it not be like that, but it is like that. And, I don't know. I mean, there's no advantages for me at all. What can I say? I mean, and again, 6 weeks ago, there was that guy in Paris who was followed home at the music, and he was beaten by 3 policemen. He held the door open to his apartment, and if he hadn't, I don't know what would have happened. He was brutally beaten, and the president had to come on, and talk about it. I mean, I mean, just stop. I don't know what to say, Justin, to be honest. I really don't know what to say. I don't know how to sort of, I mean, it just, you know, when the George Floyd thing happened, I kind of like, I wasn't aware of it until afterwards because I blocked it out. I blocked it out in a way because that's what you do, because it happens so often that in order for me to put one foot in front of the other, it doesn't go away. It's here somewhere, hurting me, affecting me, whatever. How it's sort of having its ramifications on me. But in order to put one foot in front of the other, I had to sort of put it to one side. I didn't look at it in a deep way until things obviously blew up, because it's just, you know, it's just too much sometimes, too much.
Steve, you know, you've often told stories, and not just here, but in your other films, about suffering and about resilience and endurance. These are not new things for you, but here there does seem to be this, I don't know if it's near equal, but it's very important, this emphasis also on joy and warmth and life, which is sort of an antidote to a lot of that, and the sense of community that allows people to endure. Can you just talk about, Lovers Rock, and especially, I mean, obviously it's the most overtly joyous of the five, but can you talk about just how that was important to you to strike that balance of joy amidst suffering?
I think in all the movies, there's people have been challenged and they've risen to the challenge. That's why it's called small acts. You know, that we can overcome anything as a community, especially when we're together. There's nothing we can't do, no mountain we can't move. And I think, you know, the fact that, you know, these young people were not, you know, it's based on my art, you know, people were not welcome to clubs. There used to be a quota if you're allowed into a club. So people made their own clubs, you know, made their own, dance clubs, places to meet and greet. I mean, those places became like churches, you know, and it was a beautiful thing to sort of create that environment of love. And, you know, again, it was just, you know, when we play silly games, when we put on Kunta Kinte, and to see those amazing actors stay within their character, stay within the limits of that time and place, 1980, but at the same time let go, was just, you know, amazing. Certain things in that environment had to happen. Maybe, of course, things were going on within those individuals that needed to come out, and it was like church. It was like church. There's no two ways about it. It was like church, in a way that it was their church, you know, not any other church, their church, to express and to sort of, you know, you have to just be. I was very grateful to be a witness to that, and sometimes as a director, you become a witness. That's it. That's what you would want all the time, but it's not often. It's very rare. But I was a witness on that occasion.
That's beautifully said, because, and I think I know what you mean. I think that feels true for us as an audience as well. We're witnessing to something that is transpiring, even whether we're there or not. You know, and that's that silly game scene is, I think. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No. I'm just adding to what you're saying. Action, it didn't matter. It was beyond. It came out of the frame. You know, it was whatever you want to call it. Whatever spirit, Holy Spirit, or spiritual. I don't know. I'm saying spirit or something else. Something was happening, and it was euphoric. That's what it was. Yeah. Euphoric.
It's euphoric. It's levitational almost. And I'm glad you mentioned the silly game scene in particular, which is, I think, just the most exquisitely beautiful scene I've seen in anything this year, and I think many would agree. You talk about just choosing that song in particular, what does it mean to you, and how? I know we could do a whole conversation just on the music, the curation of the music in Lovers Rock, but that song in particular.
Well, Dennis Ravel, the producer of that, he plays the old right. Guy, the lodger in the dance.
That's wonderful.
And he said to me, Steve, I would love to be in the film. Can I be a bus conductor in your film? I said, no, Dennis, I have other plans for you. So and he's the master of that genre. So it was like having, you know, I don't know, Bootsy Collins in your dance, you know. So, you know, his presence was just amazing. And what happened was, we kind of put the record on, and people knew the song, whatever, and then they knew the song through rehearsing with an amazing the choreographer, Coral Medson, who was an amazing choreographer, because we rehearsed for a long time, so the song went up. But what happened was that I predicted certain things would happen, but I couldn't predict how it was going to happen. And it happened. And it was so, Justin, I can't really say what happened, but it was the voices, and it was just like lights went off in other people's heads. And it was just beautiful. It was just gorgeous, gorgeous.
You see that on the screen so clearly. You know, this project across the board allowed you to work with a lot of very talented people who are starting out in their careers, among them Amara J. St. Aubin, the star of Lovers Rock, and Kenya Sandy, the young star of Education. You always get terrific performances from your actors, and you do again here, but can you talk specifically about just the joy or the challenge of working with newcomers to the screen?
You know what it is? Yeah. It's also, you know, they inspire me, because, you know, you've got a person, you know, who comes on set and doesn't really know what's going on. And, you know, it's beautiful because they bring something that you'll never, you know, they'll never have that opportunity to go on set again like that. So it's actually, you know, it's very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's very generous to me. And I think if I could just help them to be comfortable in that environment, and they can see people are there for them, then they can flower. I mean, Amara was just absolutely incredible. I mean, for me, this is her first time on a movie set, first time as a lead in the picture. I mean, you know, for me, she reminds me of Juliette Binoche. And Unbearable Lightness of Being. There's a certain kind of, you want to be with her, you want to almost help you. It's almost like, you know, when sometimes people are scared of flying and they're flying the plane as a passenger. I'm there in the movie theater or at home thinking, come on, you can do it, turn left, because she evokes this empathy in you. And you want her to succeed. So I think that's film star quality, I think, when people can do that, I think. And, you know, as far as this young chap, you know, Kenya is concerned, fearless. He would be in situations where I think, okay, my goodness, this is a bit of a stressful situation. Kenya, are you okay? And you turn to me, yeah, I'm fine. I'm great, thanks. I'd be like, okay, action. Because there was a curiosity, but also, again, he's gifted. He's gifted. He's a guy a young man who's come to work. I mean, he went deep, that child. And I was a bit worried, obviously, because you don't want anyone to have any kind of issue, you know, when they're working. But he would just turn and snap himself out of it and say, I'm okay, I'm having a good time, because he was there. I mean, come on, the guy is he's amazing. Again, you know, I don't want to compare him to anything, anyone. But you know, when you think of the, you know, a young Leo in This Life, is it This Life with De Niro? I can't remember. There's a movie, and I know that people are telling.
It's on the tip.
Yeah. Right, moving on. There you go.
We'll remember it when we're done.
There's a want and a need to go that far, and and you say, okay, well, I'm just grateful you're here. Thank you very much. But also having to sort of to help that so it doesn't burn out, and also admire it and help that, and also sort of just give the confidence to sort of be is very important, because you know. That's what it's about. It's about allowing people to have the confidence to try things out and see how far they can go with it, and that's it. And working with actors is one of those things where it's about the environment. If they understand the environment is there for them and everyone is on their side, amazing. Because actors are very skittish. They're extremely. They understand. Things up. They know about it. There's reverberations that will get to them going on a bit.
And it's not just the newcomers either. I mean, one of the great things, especially about Mangrove, is you show us actors that we may know better in a different light, whether it's Letitia Wright or Sean Parks in particular. I mean, they're just, I felt, and John Boyega in Red, White, and Blue, which I think is the best thing he's ever done and maybe been allowed to do. Just, you talk about, you find new dimensions in actors that we've seen before.
I think Sean, I think Sean, again, Sean for me, again, I'm sorry, I've got to give names as comparisons so you guys, we could jump metaphors. It's almost like Al Pacino in a way, because, early Al Pacino, where he doesn't have to do much to reverberate a lot. Sean doesn't have to do a lot to say a lot. And I think for a lot of times before then, because, you're an actor, been in the game for a long time, often you overdo things. And just to bring him down, and to see him get louder as I bring him down, he gets louder. He evokes so much. It's just amazing because a movement, a gesture, you know what he's feeling. Your heart is just with him, and it's so beautiful. Again, I said, it's like Miles. How many notes you need, man? I mean, how many notes you need, So, as far as John is concerned, John, John was a situation similar to Leroy Logan, who he's portraying. He was a poster boy. One for Star Wars, one for the Metropolitan Police. Literally, both were poster boys, and they were let down by the institutions they were involved with, not for anything that they had done themselves. So this was John's opportunity, in some ways, to sort of explore, feel, touch, be scared, be angry, be vulnerable. And I think so many comparisons were there with Leroy and himself, as well as his father and our fathers. I know Courtier, again, talking about Courtier Newland and how we spoke about our fathers in this piece, and how similar it was. There was a real depth of emotion there. And again, it's that narrative of Leroy is like John's narrative in a way. Absolutely. Absolutely, there's no if, but, or maybe about it. And again, there was a situation where when John gave that speech in Hyde Park during the Black Lives Matter demonstration for George Floyd, who was in the audience of those 3,000 people? Leroy Logan was in the audience.
Oh my God, wow.
Yeah, unbeknownst to anyone. So then the next few days afterwards, a week after, he comes back to set to finish the film with a new sense of want, and that's when we shot, for example, the snooker table when he walks into the police sort of rectory room. So there was intensity. So what real life and what happened with him outside of the film set and onside the film set, because even before giving him the opportunity to sort of play that part was it just crossed over. In an amazing way.
That's amazing, and that's fantastic. I just have one more question for you, Steve. And in this, as we are in this thing called awards season, Small Axe, which was, of course, made for television primarily, but would have, in a more normal year, Lovers Rock and Mangrove would have played Cannes, where your first feature Hunger played, 12 years ago. The film was named, the entire project was named Best Picture of the Year by the Los Angeles Film Critics Association. Congratulations, as a group I'm a member of too. This has opened a lot of debate though too, issues like, is it film or TV? A debate I don't mind admitting I find rather tedious, but also, is it a single work? Is it a collection of work? To me, it speaks to the sort of the absurdity of trying to categorize things, which is of course something awards are designed to do. But congratulations on all this recognition that Small Axe has received and will receive in the future. How does it feel to just have made a work that straddles so many different boundaries and definitions even?
Well, firstly and foremostly, this was always meant for television and streaming. I wanted my mother to have access to this, easy access to this. That's what that was about. And also it follows the ethos of Small Axe, so the possibilities and generosity and accessibility of it. I needed to go into people's homes. I needed to go where I needed to reach people with this project. So that's what it was about. And for me, it's been very emotional for a lot of people, very emotional. I get letters every day since it's been on. People talk, telling me about their lives and whatnot. And I remember the first screening that I went to in London, people crying. There's a real sense of understanding, seeing themselves, people sort of being real, people realizing things for the first time, connecting the dots. So it's been quite emotional, I'll be honest. And I'm very grateful to sort of the BBC and Amazon for helping me to make this project. And you know, again, you know, Tracy Scofield and David Tennant for, you know, helping me get this off the ground. And, you know, you can't, you know, again, you can't do this on your own. It's just impossible. So it's one of those things where, you know, yeah, it was a, you know what was so beautiful about it, Justin, in the sense of the way of Small Acts, it was us coming together and making this thing possible. Absolutely, there's not an if, but, or maybe. It was a we thing, as we in the West Indies say.
That comes through so clearly in the work, Steve, and thank you and just all your very gifted collaborators for this extraordinary project. And thank you for your time, and congratulations again. And it's been just a real honor talking to you about this. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you, and thank you to the Producers Guild for hosting this conversation, and thank you all for watching. Good night.